Mamish the beginning, Bereshit. Okay? So when Hashem was creating man, we were created out of body and soul. How did it work? Let's read the pasuk. Vayetzer Adonai Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama v'yafach ba'apav nishmat Chaim v'ayi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. And God formed the man of soil from the earth and blew into his nostrils the soul of life, and man became a living soul. Now, if you're familiar with Targum Onkelos, Onkelos was a righteous convert, and actually the Aramaic interpretation and translation of the Torah was actually given at Sinai as well. So what happened was, as it came down through the generations, there was a little bit of, maybe got a little bit lost here, a little bit confused here. So Onkelos, he took it upon himself to then bring it down exactly the way it was. And so that's what we have Targum Onkelos. So it's very, very Elyon, very, very high. And so he says on this pasuk something very important. He says about the spirit being blown into man. He says, "V'nafach ba'anapohi nishmata dechaye v'havat ba'adam leruach mimalala." And this is very important. A speaking soul. He defines the idea of being like a living soul. Again, the nefesh chaya means that you're a speaking soul. And Rashi says on that what makes the game changer is da'at, knowledge, and the ability to speak. So now we can all see how that the essential element of who we are is the soul inside of us. And how does it come to expression? Mostly through our speech. Okay? So now we know our souls, as we learn the different elements of our souls, we have the animating soul, the nefesh, and then we have the next level, which is the ruach, which is also the word for wind, and spirituality. So it's very interesting how it all works together. And that's also what our speech is. And above that is the neshama, and that's our thought process. So all these things that we do below have reflection into the highest worlds above. And so they go up and they come down, and they can bring abundance to the world, or God forbid, the opposite. So we are in the driver's seat in a certain way, as well, limited partners, as it were, with the Boy Olam, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator. And so one of our greatest tools, if not our greatest tool, is what we're doing right now, speaking and listening. So that brings us to our subject of guarding our tongue, which is something that is I think when I was coming up in the society I was coming in, there's a different rule set about what it means to guard your tongue, what it means to be musari, which is ethical with your mouth, with your tongue, your speech. But we have a different level. It's a totally different level. And in fact, it's so deep that the second temple, the destruction of the second temple was based upon free hate as expressed through forbidden speech, evil talk, lashon hara. Now the chidush is, the real novelty is when someone says evil talk, what's probably going through your heads? Evil talk. Probably like, oh, they're cursing someone, or using bad words, or saying lies. But that's not the evil talk that the Chofetz Chaim is talking about. And so the Chofetz Chaim, about 140 years ago, and he basically took the laws from the written Torah and the oral Torah, and he organized it into like a set regimen of halakha, of how to do this. And so that's like the main source when people talk about this idea of guarding the tongue. Of course, it's been brought down before, but he's the one who kind of sort of organized it in a very organized fashion, like halakha, like the Shulchan Aruch, but of speech. So that being said, he brings a definition of what is the lashon hara, what is evil talk. So it's speaking disparagingly about your fellow, and it's true. That's the tricky part, and it can also be not true, but we'll talk about that in a second. So for example, just saying like coming out of a lecture, and like I really didn't like that lecture. That's lashon hara. Seems like something normal, like you just didn't like the lecture. But so we're in this world to uplift this world every second, in everything we think, say, and do, and has massive effects on the whole world. So it's like someone's not going to walk around with a gun and start shooting. There's going to be a very limited purpose. It's going to be with training and thought process. You're going to aim exactly what you're trying to do. God forbid, if you just, it's mass murder.
Yes.
But with our tongues, with our words, it's analogous, but we don't see it. We don't know what's going on, but it's happening all the time, all around us. So the idea then is we have to think before we would say. So that same example, why am I saying that? Why? What? There's no reason. Right? So everything we're thinking, we have to think ahead before we say. And there's a very regimented way to say certain things and how to say them. We can say negative things, but there's a set of conditions we have to follow, and it has to be for a purpose. We're not just going around just using our mouth like a machine gun for no reason, basically. So that's the classic definition of Lashon Hara. But also it includes even areas. Vardy's book again. Said, so even if it's not necessarily derogatory, but it can cause damage to your fellow, that also can be considered Lashon Hara. There are specific circumstances of when that may be. And then what happens if someone then exaggerates the truth, or just says a straight up lie that's despairing, that's negative or despairing, then that's actually called Motzi Shema, and that's defamation. And that's even a higher level of prohibition. So and there's one other element which is really damaging, and that's called tail bearing, and that's so I'm going to read it for you, the pasuk. Rechilut it's called, and I'm just going to give you the pasuk where this comes from. Oh, it's in this book. There we go. Okay, the source in the Torah, it says in Vayikra, Lo telech rachil ba'amecha. Okay, don't go tail-bearing on your people. And so this includes Lashon Hara, as we discussed, but there's also rechilut. Now, what's rechilut? That's like someone going to someone else and saying, "Hey, Joe, you can't believe what Tom said about you. Shmuel, you can't believe what Reuben said about you. He said, ba, 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 ba." And it can be all true. But what's he done? I forget the names I used, I'm sorry. But then this guy said, "What, he's talking about me? What?" And then all of a sudden he's got sinah. He's got like anger to a level. So maybe hate, maybe just anger, maybe like, what's he talking about me for? And all of a sudden that's a triangle of destruction. And so it says every time that we're not building the Beit Mikdash, we're destroying it. And so the number one factor for keeping the temple from coming is our unity. And that's on the basis of this problem of using our tongues improperly, of this improper speech. So Rabbi Gon says it's so beautiful. He says, so what we need to do is, instead of adding this negative talk, we need to add positive talk. We need to add free love. And he says something so beautiful is that it's not business. He loves me, so I love him. That's not love. That's business. That's trade. It's equal. So it's even where people feel negativity or something's not going right, then we still use this upper level of using proper speech and trying to find in our hearts to look deeper into the person and judge the person favorably and things like that. So so now let's see. So now we're here in the Shiva and we're learning basically, we're praying, learning how to pray in our kavanah, our prayer, and performing mitzvahs, and everything we do, and so much of it involves our speech. So one of the things we learn is that if, God forbid, someone's using improper speech, it's not the separate things. Everything goes together. So the same vehicle that one's using for praising and wanting to spread good, if it's being sullied, then actually on a spiritual plane, it's actually blocking, to a certain extent, the ability to uplift with our words. So it's something you have to be aware of, that every time that, God forbid, someone's uses improper speech, it's actually creating a limitation then on the power of their good speech. Which is why, if you ever talk to like Rabbi Gon or someone who's very, very pure and tzaddik, they speak to you a regular conversation, but you walk away a different person. Why is that? Why is that? Because their soul, basically our midot, our character traits, and our soul is Hashem. He breathed into us, our souls. We have a spark of Hashem inside of us. And so we have the power to choose whether to be clear vessels and allow that godliness in us to be flowing out of us, or the opposite. That's free choice. So the more someone, God forbid, sullies this and blocks it, then the less is coming through. And the opposite. So when we work on this and we grow ourselves in this and we become aware of it by the different laws, then the more and more of that godliness comes out of us, and then we have that beautiful effect on people around us. Directly we can, and also throughout the universes and the upper worlds. So
what about the newspapers?
Oh, it's a good question. So
Just information of the Lashon Hara mixed with it.
it's a very good question, and so let's talk about it directly. There's a machloket, of course. If we're talking about Judaism, there's got to be some level of different opinions. So there's different opinions about what happens when the improper talk, the evil speech, the Lashon Hara, is said in front of a group. Because then when it's said in front of a group, there's an idea that then everyone's going to know about it. So that if everyone already knows about it, you're not really adding so much to the mix, according to one opinion, because it's already out there. And it's not technically a violation, according to that opinion. So the Chaim takes a different approach. And maybe we'll go inside and read a little about it. Yes, it's one of the most complicated areas, actually, of the law. So let's look at it inside. Okay. So let's just read inside. Lashon Hara spoken in the presence of three people. Now today, it's interesting because this was written back in the times when communication wasn't so broad today. Today, 2 seconds and 1 million people can see what you wrote. So it's a bit different. And that's the beautiful thing about Judaism is that we're breathing, living, and it adapts. And we take the laws into the current situations, and then we see how they work together. So let's just read it. Speaking Lashon Hara before one or several people. It is forbidden to speak Lashon Hara even to one person. If one speaks to several people, his sin is magnified according to the size of his audience. So yeah. Okay. Okay. If Lashon Hara is spoken in the presence of three people, it will eventually become public knowledge. According to some opinions, a person who heard it spoken in the presence of three may then repeat it in an incidental manner, without intent to spread the Lashon Hara. So then it gets very tricky as to what's incidental, what's saying it for the purpose of spreading it. So some hold that it's forbidden to repeat it even incidentally unless the information arises in the course of a different discussion. So and then at the end of it he says, okay. Lashon Hara spoken in the presence of three may be repeated only to a person who will not immediately believe it to be true. If you immediately accept it, or might even add words of disdain, it is forbidden under any circumstances to tell him. In conclusion, in light of these restrictions, and there's other restrictions, I'm not going to read through all of them, the license to repeat Lashon Hara spoken in public is rarely applicable. Furthermore, even if all the conditions are fulfilled, it is unclear whether this license is accepted in halakha. Therefore, one should not rely on this leniency. I just want to remind you, this is a condensed to the point version, but the actual book of the Chaim, he brings down detailed analysis and argument from the Gemara and its sources. So he brings this very complex, and he brings the other side story. And so I went through this, and it's you see the inside. You go inside the head of Rabbi Israel Meir Cohen Kagan, who is the Chofetz Chaim, and you see his mind works, and it's beautiful. So he's on the strict side. There's others. The Rambam is actually on the more lenient side. So it's a good question, and about exactly what it means today, like with the news and what you're allowed to listen to. Because the thing about Lashon Hara is not just the one saying it; it's the one hearing it as well. Can also be subject to the prohibition. So it's a good question, but it's definitely one you have to, in terms of the news as it is, it's definitely, I think, a tricky business. And but I don't want to actually say right now like exactly what I'm not a posting, but it's a great question. It's one I think you should ask your Rav about how you should approach it. I personally, my take on it is that I try and limit it as much as possible because it has a very negative impact on me. And so that's a good indication it's probably not great. I think it's important to know what's going on, but there's like clean ways of getting the information without the Lashon Hara. And a lot of it probably is because here's the deal. If the Lashon Hara is exaggerated in any way, I mean, so if it's a true statement that's derogatory, but it's exaggerated in any way, that takes it out of the category of Lashon Hara into the category of Motzi Shem Ra, which is defamation. And so it's very tricky.
Because when I read the newspaper and they talk about the different prime minister, or this guy, that guy, they only write bad things about them,
right?
And when you're reading it, you only know the bad things that they're doing. You don't know that you don't see the good things that they're doing.
100%.
And all these things are getting into you, and you hate that person already, even without knowing who that person is.
Okay. So I think we've answered the question in the sense that it's probably definitely not a good thing to do, whether it's a 100% prohibition. I think in the sense that whether the newspaper is adding all this stuff to it and doing it in a way that creates a negative light, then probably is a prohibition. But I don't want to say it directly, but I think it probably could be. And it's very tricky. And so it's a good point. Let's go to the name Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim means desires life. And on your point, we want life. And so that's sort of darkness, what we're talking about now. So let's see what it says. This is from the Tehillim of David HaMelech. It's in Lamed Daled 34, and this is verse 13. And this is where the name of the book comes from. And Rav Meir, Israel Meir got the name Chofetz Chaim. So basically, when you hear the name Chofetz Chaim, you never almost hear the rabbi's name. You always hear Chofetz Chaim, because this is probably his most famous work, other than the Mishnah Berurah. So it says, Mi ha'ish hachafetz chaim ohev yamin l'rot tov. Who is the man who desires life, who loves to see goodness? Nitzah lishoncha meira u'shofatecha midaber mirama. Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceitfully. Okay? So meira v'aseh tov. Shun evil and do good. Bekesh shalom v'radefeu. Seek peace and pursue it. So the one who desires life, what do they say? They talked about right here, what we hear and what we say. So, on that note, it says the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, he brings a midrash, and let's just read exactly what it says. It says, for every single moment that a person guards his mouth from speaking forbidden words, he merits to enjoy a hidden light that no angel could possibly fathom. This is on such a high level, and it was a lot of times with Yahadut, the things that are on such a high level are things that aren't apparent in front of our eyes. A lot of things is the work of the heart, and so this is another thing where you don't necessarily see it, but we can understand it, we can feel it. You know, and the more that we're purifying ourselves, the more we feel it. And the analogy is like someone who, God forbid, is an alcoholic. They drink, and their body doesn't even respond anymore. It's like, but someone who's healthy, if they drink even a little bit of the amount of the person that the alcoholic is drinking, they throw up. Their body rejects it. It's a good thing. That's a good thing. It looks painful, but actually that moment is a good thing. So if we're walking around and feeling like, what's going on around me? Why is everyone doing something that feels so wrong? It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It means probably we're very healthy. And the more that we study these laws, the more that we're aware of them, and the more that you can see them, and then the more we can guard ourselves and uplift ourselves. I'm going to say this, another thing about the value of this. It says, and this is in the Talmud Yerushalmi, so just as the reward for Torah study is equal to the reward for all of the mitzvot, the punishment for the Lashon Hara is equal to the punishment for all their sins. So we're talking about heavy duty stuff here. And let's see. So let's take an example. someone, you're riding on a bus. You're sitting next to someone who starts talking to you, and what are you going to do? The bus is full, and you're kind of stuck. So they're talking to you and talking to you. Oh my gosh, this is clearly Lashon Hara. They're talking about whether it's someone you know or just someone you don't know, but it's in the public eye or something like that. And you don't want to hear it. So what do? I mean, if it's someone you know or it's a friend of yours, you can say, hey, I'm kind of like trying to read or I'm trying to, but let's say you can't do that, or they'd be offended and it would create, some more aggression or more, they start getting mad at you or something. So Rabbi Gon said something beautiful about this. He said, have you ever been sitting in class and all of a sudden you like look up and like 15 minutes went by and you didn't hear a thing? You just zoned out. So you can use that same skill set. You just zone out. So just like, but you don't want to do anything like give them any fuel to the fire. Like, oh yeah, yeah, sure. That's a forbidden. But you can just zone out. And then it's one way of avoiding it. Because that happens a lot. We're stuck in a situation, you can't get out of it, or God forbid, it's people in your family that aren't aware of these things. And so you're not going to be like, start correcting them when they're not, what are you talking about? And then create the friction. So that's a good skill set. I'll tell you how serious it is that the Chofetz Chaim says that it's more serious than your parnasah, than your living, quote unquote, your economic living. So if someone's in a job or they're stuck in a situation where they're forced to be working or putting out the Lashon Hara, or to be constantly hearing it and there's no way to get away from it, he says you got to change jobs. In our society, it's really hard to think because if people are talking a certain way, I have to change my job. And he said, and he says to the extent, even if it's like, I don't know, there's not another job waiting for me, what am I going to do? He says, you got to go. So, I mean, everyone needs to make a rav and have who to consult with, but I'm trying to give to the extent of how it's serious. Think about it. The sages tell us this is what destroyed the Second Temple. A Roman army didn't destroy the Second Temple. The Roman army destroyed a building. What destroyed the Second Temple was our disunity based upon not being ayin tovah to each other, and then talking about it and using improper speech. So thinking about this and building this, and a lot of the yeshiva Merkaz Harav, every single day, they say something from regarding your speech. A bit of the halacha, every single morning after the tefillah, say something about the halacha regarding your speech. It should be part of our daily lives. Just like we get up and we have breakfast and we get dressed and then we go, learn other areas of Torah. We need to every single day be thinking about this. And so it should be, just like I said, the analogy of that gun. Like if you think about your mouth as a weapon, or, and I won't say a weapon, I'd say more like a power that can be used for, let's go to the superheroes. They have power, it's going to be used for good or used for bad. It's the same idea. And this is a superpower that we have. The fact that we can actually change the world through our tefillah and our learning and things like that. So by negative implication, we have the opposite power as well. So we have to understand that what we're wielding here. And then the more we understand it, the more we learn about these laws, then the more that we can practice it, purify ourselves, and then become ambassadors of Hashem in the world and have this massive influence in the world. So we should all be blessed. And I just on closing, because I got to go to my shiur, there's a blessing here at the beginning, and maybe just read it real quick. I saw it here. Okay. It says, Rabbono Sha'olam, Yeh Ratzon Mifanecha, Rachum v'chanun, Shetizkini, Hayom v'chol yom, Lishmor pi, Lishoni milishon hara, u'rechilut. Hashem, please help me guard my tongue from Lashon Hara, from evil talk, and rechilut, tale-bearing. Ve'ezeher midaber afilu a'ish yichidi. Help me protect myself from talking about even a single person. V'chol sheken, all the more so, Klal Yisrael. God forbid I should say anything bad about Klal Yisrael. That's another thing. It's not just about individuals. It's like, the government, or Jews. In the shuk, everyone's this. You have to be very careful. Al helech mehem, even like a certain society. Them, those guys. We're good, but those guys are messed. That same idea. וכל שכן מלהתרעם על מידותיו שהקדוש ברוך הוא. God forbid, nothing about the relation to God. ואזהר מדבר דברי שקר. And we don't want to say, God forbid, straight up lies. It's all the more so worse. Chanufa, machloket, and also the ideas of machloket. By the way, I forgot to mention that when there's 17 possible violations when someone says Lashon Hara, and then 14 positive mitzvahs that one doesn't do. So, I mean, I didn't start going through them, but they're listed here in this book. Kas, anger, hate, that's just like opening the door. And so it says in the Rambam's letter to a son we were talking about earlier, one of the things he says, son, always speak benachat, like in a nice way, and you won't get angry. Because once you get angry, it's like a foreign soul comes into you, and then that's when you can lose it, and that's when the Lashon Hara and evil talk comes out. So be very careful. Gava is another big one, like the pride. And that's one of the things he says is you can always be humble no matter who you're with, who you are. And so that's another thing we have to always be careful. Ona'ah, devarim, habanat panim, and that's a really big one. Embarrassing someone in public is really, really big one. Tzanut, and just messing around and joking around. A lot of times that's a perfect vehicle where talk starts going all over the place. So you have to sit with like-minded people, spiritual people, talk good things, and we'll be good.
The Lashon Hara applies to the person who listens to that song.
Right, that's right. So it goes both ways. And everything that's asur. I'll tell you one thing on parting is that on the upper levels, when someone's, God forbid, says a shon about another, they trade merits and demerits. So God forbid, if someone says a shon hara about someone, then the person who says it is giving over his merits to that person, and that person's sins come over to this person in the upper worlds. So it's really a good investment for someone not to be involved. So on that note, I got to run, but it's been great. Thank you very much. Shakoach. We should all be blessed to speak only the Bar Torah, good things, and what we need for our particular professions, whoever it may be, and avoid evil talk. And we should build the temple quickly in our days, and Shem Shmor Kol HaChayalim, and return all of our hostages, please God.